Mac and Mac guys here with you on Birds 365. Joining us is longtime NFL writer, host these days on Talk of the Game, and also podcast host jumping aboard with us. Oh, and yeah, we'll ask him about the opposition to the Eagles because he was a 49er guy for years out there, out on the left coast. Our buddy Clark Judge jumps in. Clark, how you been? How's your New Year going?
Good, Jody. How about you?
We're doing great, and we are looking forward to a great game on Sunday between the Eagles and the 49ers. Unquestionably, two best teams in the NFC this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I was saying in writing, let's just cut to the finish. We got the two best teams, 49ers and the Eagles. Let's just get to it. The Eagles, I think, the Eagles and the Bengals are the most complete teams. The 49ers, we all know about the quarterback situation. That's the X factor. This kid's played out of his mind, but defensively, they're really good and they can run the ball, and defense and running games travel.
We know the history of this league. Nobody knows it better than you, Clark. A rookie.
Yeah, they do. A lot of people know it better than me.
A rookie. Don't be modest. A rookie quarterback has never won a championship game. 4 of them have been to this spot. Is Brock Purdy different? Can he be different in this environment?
He can. There are several things that I worry about. One is, you're right, the environment. It's a different environment than any he's been exposed to. It's a hostile environment. Anyone who's been there knows it as an outsider or a visiting team. It's a hostile environment. It's difficult to play with or in front of. Secondly, it's just simply the scenario. You talk about the 4th rookie. I remember very well being at the 1995 conference championship game. That was Dallas and Brett Favre. Brett Favre was not a rookie. Yeah. Brett Favre was a really good quarterback. Yeah. And that was his first conference championship game. And the balls were sailing over everybody's head. And afterwards we said to him, what was going on? He goes, I got so geeked up. I got so anxious. I couldn't control my emotions. This guy seems different. I mean, if you know Brett Favre, he's a very emotional guy. This guy seems a little bit different. He's got his emotions in check. But still, the scenario is such that you win this, you go to the Super Bowl. That gets to a lot of guys. And you're talking now about the last player taken in the draft, somebody who's a 3rd-string quarterback this year who's suddenly been thrown into this situation. I think it's an awful lot to ask of some guy.
The chess match that is between defense coordinator and play callers every single game in the National Football League gets heightened because it's the championship game. You're talking to 2 Jonathan Gannon fans, although still, even with the season they had, there are still some people in Philadelphia in the fan base who go, he doesn't blitz. He's not aggressive enough. Gotta let him go take the Texans job.
You know what I say, Jody? I always say Philadelphia fans aren't happy unless they're miserable, right? Yeah. So they must be happy.
There's a percentage of them that fit that definition, yes. But Gannon is up against a major challenge this week in Kyle Shanahan, his ability to play call, even with a 3rd-string rookie quarterback. What will decide that chess match between those two guys?
Make Purdy beat you. I mean, don't let it be Deebo Samuel on jet sweeps. Don't let it be Christian McCaffrey. Don't let it be Elijah Mitchell. Make Purdy beat you. They've got a very effective running game. What do we know about McCaffrey? He's hurt. What do we know about Mitchell? He's not feeling real well either, and he was hurt this season. They do like to do a lot with Deebo Samuel, but he's been hurt this year. So put it in the quarterback's hands. Let's see what he's going to do. And this guy is the last guy taken in the draft. Nobody expects anything of him. We saw last week, struggled a little bit. He wasn't bad. He doesn't turn the ball over, but make him beat you. If you have to come from behind, can he do it? Now, I know what we have with that one example back in college, right? Hurts against Iowa State. That was in college, all right? And that was a great game, 42-41, played lights out. This is a whole different scenario. So make him try to beat you. You've got a ferocious pass rush. Can he really figure out what's going on here if he can't get the running game going? Can he bring you back from 10 down, 14 down? I don't know that.
All right. How important is coaching here, Clark? Because we all know Kyle Shanahan's reputation of scheming people up, and you see it on the film. I mean, he's just if he's not the best play caller, he's certainly right there with Andy Reid, play schemer, whatever you want to call it. They do a lot of different things. You mentioned the jet sweeps, the orbit motions, the motion. How much can he scheme up? He's done it already. They haven't lost in 3 months.
Right.
Brock has won whatever. What is it? 7, 8 straight.
7
He's
starts.
already run it. Yeah. He came in that 8th game.
That's right. Might as well be 8.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how important is coaching in this game, and how good has Kyle Shanahan been to get to this point?
Well, I've always said the coaching is at its most important in the pros as opposed to college. College, you have better players. In the pros, theoretically, you all have the same players. You have the chance to get up the same players. Now, we know you don't, but you still have a chance to get great players, all right? And so to me, coaching really, really matters. I think you see that in Kansas City with Andy Reid, and you guys certainly know about what Andy did in Philadelphia. But Kyle Shanahan is a great schemer, play caller, that sort of thing. I do worry about him, though, because people want to put him on a different plane than everyone else. I go, wait a second. You mentioned, Jody, at the beginning, yeah, I covered this team. You know, I covered the 49ers back in the 90s when they were a really great team. He's the offensive play caller who blew that 28-3 game against the Patriots with Atlanta. Then he goes to San Francisco a couple years later. He has a 10-point lead on Kansas City in the fourth quarter. Blows that. Why? Because he falls in love with his play call. He's going to be smarter than everybody else, so he's going to throw the ball when he should run it. In Atlanta, all you do is run that ball, and the Patriots aren't coming back. He should have gotten a game ball from New England. In the Kansas City game, same thing. All he had to do was run the ball. What could Kansas City not do?
He was bad at the end. Clark, he was bad at the end of the first half last week. He was bad.
No question. I mean, I don't know what it is. Sometimes coaches just think they're smarter than everyone else. And my pet peeve, and I know you guys know this because I've mentioned it before, but my whipping post is Brandon Staley out in the Charger land. I cover the Chargers, and I look at some of the stuff he does, and I go, what are you doing? You've got the players. Why are you doing this? And it just frazzles me. That's why I think Andy is a cut above most everyone. He really kind of plays to players' strengths. Not to say this guy doesn't, but I think there's a sense with some of these, especially younger guys. I said because I'm an older guy, but they're going to just show you that they're just a little more clever than everyone else. We're going to try something now, like Andy did. I mean, it wasn't Andy, but that team did the sno bubble. I thought that was a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. Come on, guys. I mean, yeah, you're clever you're more clever than everybody. Yeah, snow globe. You know, you guys having a lot of fun. Don't demean the other team. Come on. I mean, geez. But anyway, Kyle Shanahan, his father was a good friend of mine. I covered him. His father was a brilliant play caller, and he took a lot of what originated way back when with Sid Gilman, but that Don Coryell done, and then with Bill Walsh, and he kept tweaking it. And you know what happened in '94 when they went to the Super Bowl? They destroyed the Chargers. But that team, very much like this in a way, they struggled early, and then they just went on a run. They were actually, you guys would probably remember, they were 3-2 in the fifth game. They lost to Philadelphia out in San Francisco when Steve Young got benched, and all hell was breaking loose out there. And then they just went on a run after that. This team is very much the same. Can run the ball, very good defensively. Difference is that team had a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Quickie question, since you went there. How did Brandon Staley keep his job?
Good question, Tony. Well, I will say honestly, my feeling is that the ownership, the Spanos, and it's Dean Spanos who owns it. They're very happy with what he did there. They don't want to spend the money. I think he's making something like $4 million a year, which is a lot of money. But in the coaching carousel, probably isn't. They're happy that he got to the playoffs. And in all honesty, this team was banged up a lot this year. They lost a lot of players. And so they were lucky.
Part of the banged up was Mike Williams, who shouldn't have been in the game in week 18.
That's it. Don't get me started. I mean, it's if it's not the analytics, it's something like that. But at least he scaled back on the analytics some this year. But that Jacksonville game, I thought, I don't see how he survives this. And I went, wait a second, Spanos they're not going to fire him. When in fact, a guy like Sean Payton is the perfect guy for them to have with that quarterback. The quarterback's kind of plateaued. He's a terrific talent, and he could be a great quarterback, but he's kind of plateaued there.
Well, you got to be willing to spend money to get Sean Payton, and then pay another coach on top of it. You're right, Clark.
Not just money, draft picks too, high draft picks.
Yeah. Let's talk about the coach here in Philadelphia, because he rubbed some people the wrong way. You know, a little bit new school. You're an old school guy. I think we all are. You know, he's celebrating like players, getting an interception, running down, you know, mugging for the camera. But, behind the scenes, he does a heck of a job. You talked about ego, Kyle screwing things up. He took a step back and said, you know what? This is a really big job. Play calling, I got too bogged down. Let me give it to Shane Steichen. He's turned into more of a CEO coach. So there's a lot of good and bad. What do you think of Nick Sirianni?
Oh, there's nothing not to like. I mean, to me, he kind of mirrors the Philadelphia image. I think he's very much a member of the Philadelphia fan base. He looks that way. I mean, he's perfect for them. Perfect guy. He's volatile. He's animated, and I love what he's doing. In that, you talk about old school, and that's in essence, he has kind of gone old school in that it's running. They're running the ball and playing defense, and yeah, they're a good passing team, but it revolves them out around that running game, which is terrific. And Jalen Hurts is part of that. But can he hit you with surgical strikes down the field? Absolutely. I mean, that's why they're so dynamic. They've got all their bases covered, but especially the two most important areas, offensive and defensive lines. And Howie Roseman gets a lot of credit for that as well. But they built that to protect the quarterback. That's smart. You build from the inside out. That's really smart. A lot of people would say, well, go out and get your wide receivers, go out and get your running back. No, you've got to protect the quarterback, not only with an offensive line, but with a running game. And he's done that. I have no problem, John, excuse me. I want to make sure we get this straight. I have no problem with guys who are, animated and young guys. Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Sean McVay's pretty cool out in LA. I mean, I love what he does at times. And it was very evident this year that he was going through agony, just looking at his face. And Nick Sirianni, to me, as I said, is the perfect poster boy for Philadelphia because he is part of that group and that crowd. You could see when he's hurting, when he's happy, when he's patting guys on the back. That's great. I think that's great. He's part of that group. And of course, because when you're successful, it always works. When you're successful, people love that. They love that. And so I think Philadelphia's got too much for San Francisco here, just because, as I said, every place you go, they've got their bases covered. And the one place I worry about San Francisco is the most important job on the field.
The reason why I'll take Sirianni over McVay every day of the week and twice on Sundays, McVay comes off as egotistical. You never get that about Sirianni. Goofy, overly emotional, maybe, but not egotistical.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some truth to that. But I knew Sean. Sean's grandfather is a good friend of mine, John McVay, and Sean is not really like that. Maybe comes across that way. The guy who came across that way to me was Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. But clearly Brandon Staley in LA. I mean, that's the other thing. You guys unfortunately brought that. Well, I brought it up in the yesterday. but he's got and early in the season, they played Cleveland. He's got a 4th and 3, I think, his own 46, right? And about a minute 20 to go. Cleveland has no timeouts. He's up by 1. All right. 4th and 3. Cleveland has no timeouts. He's up by 1. What do? Oh, yeah, you punt it. Oh, no. We're going for it because the analytics say. So he throws a slant pass and it's incomplete. Now, fortunately for him, the Browns were inept. They only moved like 5 yards, 6 yards. They kicked the field goal to win the game. They missed it. Afterwards, he's asked about it. And instead of saying, I made a mistake, I wouldn't do it again, he defended this decision and said, I believe in my defense. That's why I did it. Well, if you believe in your defense, you punt the ball, all right, and let them go 70 yards. But that's the thing that really gets me about him is that it's sort of some of these sort of mysterious decisions that he shows no regret about. He's always right, and you're always wrong. And you know what? He was wrong a lot in the past 2 years.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fair to say. Want to shift to the AFC since we got you, Clark, because what an interesting matchup. Again, Joe Burrow, I thought, going into Buffalo with 3 offensive linemen, I didn't give them much of a chance, and they blew that team out. It wasn't even a game, really. So really impressed with them. We know Andy Reid. We talked about him and his history. Patrick Mahomes, the MVP, but he's got a high ankle sprain. It's amazing what he was able to do. That's typically a 4 to 6 week injury, Clark. We know he's going to play. Can't be 100%. Can't even be close to 100%. That, in theory, makes this game a little bit more competitive, I think, a little bit more interesting. A lot of people think it shifts things to Cincinnati. What's your take on that game?
Yeah, I always thought it was going to be interesting and always thought it was going to be competitive. And again, I think I wrote something about 3 weeks ago that the best team in the AFC is not Kansas City or Buffalo, it's Cincinnati, because they are a complete team. Their defense doesn't get nearly the attention it should. Defense coordinator Lou Anarumo has done a great job. For whatever reason, he's on nobody's watch list. I don't understand it. But for all the talk about Burrow and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon, their defense makes big plays in big moments. And we saw that last year in the playoff opener against the Raiders, 4th and goal at the 9, interception out the goal line when they could have won the game. We saw it in the conference championship game against Patrick Mahomes. They held him to what? 1 field goal in the second half, interception, overtime, wins the game. So I like their chances. I never, ever underestimate what Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes can do. That said, John, what you just said about that ankle injury is the most telling part of this game. It is a 4 to 6 week injury. Anyone that covers football knows that. When I first came across it decades ago, and ankle sprain, ankle sprain, that'll be okay. And then each week they kept going, he's not coming back. He's not coming back. And it's a significant injury. And what Tony Romo said last week, I thought was telling. He said, I've had those before. I've had one before, a couple before. You can play through it in that game. You can try to play through it because the adrenaline gets you going.
Yeah.
I would think probably cortisone probably gets you going too. But you can play through it. But he said the next day I couldn't walk because it's so significant. I know that he was on the injury report yesterday as full participation. I don't know how that's possible, but he was. And I look at this game and think he's going to be limited. I mean, what does he do best? Moves around in that pocket really well. That's where he's going to be limited. So how do you adjust for that? You run the ball a lot, you throw a lot of short passes, and hope he doesn't get hit.
This is going to sound like I'm shortchanging the Bengals, and I don't want it to, but if it does, so be it. I'll apologize in advance. Yeah, I'm going to put the blame as much on the Buffalo defensive line in that game on Saturday as I am going to give Joe Burrow credit for it. He had time. He's got 3 backup offensive linemen in front of him, and he still had time to pick that defense apart. I know Von Miller was hurt, but what happened to the rest of the Buffalo defensive line? They're supposed to be the ones who are better in the weather, better in the snow, and it looked like they were slipping and sliding all over the place. What the hell, Buffalo?
Yeah, you know what I was talking about earlier? You build it from the inside out. The offensive and defensive lines, their offensive defensive lines didn't show up. I mean, nobody showed up that game. I mean, they were basically saying to Josh Allen, be Superman and carry us. Well, you can't do that. You just can't do that. And once they got behind by 14, they were cooked. We knew that then, and we know it now. There just was no sense of urgency there. And Jody, you're absolutely right. I went, what about this pass rush? They got 3 backup linemen. I mean, if that's the case, how good can their offensive line be? These are the backups. Their offensive linemen must be great. They must be all pros up and down that line. Well, they're not. And there was criticism of that line the first 2 games. I think they gave up the first 2 games, something like 13 sacks, and he was getting hit. Now they've gotten much better. Because they built that in the offseason. That was a real point of emphasis when they built that offensive line in the offseason. That said, I would not diminish what Joe Burrow did. He was surgical with his passing. He's unflappable, doesn't get rattled. The other thing is that the X factor here is, they're going to Arrowhead. Oh, boy, that's going to be tough. That's a tough place to win, right? He's 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes when Mahomes is playing on 2 good ankles.
Yeah, that's true. You use that word unflappable. I think it's a good one to describe the quarterbacks this year because, Burrow's got that reputation. The new Joe Cool, the old Joe Cool.
Very well.
Was pretty good. Mahomes, Jalen Hurts is like a flat line, Clark. I mean, that guy doesn't go. I mean, he's the same win, lose, no matter what. And he doesn't lose much. He's lost 1 game this year when Jalen Hurts is healthy and the starting quarterback for the Eagles. And then Brock Purdy comes in as a 7th round pick, looks unflappable. It is that intangible. We always talk about the skill sets of quarterbacks. Is that intangible more important than people give it credit for? Because we're going to get in draft season and people are going to talk about Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and Will Levis and arm talent and all this, but the people in the NFL overlook all these intangibles.
Yeah. I don't think they overlook it, but I think some are diminished. To me, the most important intangible is leadership. And your listener would say, well, yeah, of course. But sometimes you don't hear that. And I'll give you an example. And I talked about Mike Shanahan earlier. When Mike was the head coach of the Denver Broncos, he traded up in the draft to get a very talented quarterback, a guy named Jay Cutler. And he loved what he had in him. He says incredible talent. Haven't seen anything like this in a long time. We're going to make him into a great quarterback. And if you remember, guys, that time they had Jake Plummer as their quarterback, and Jake Plummer had taken them to the AFC Championship game. But I think Mike knew, I can't get any farther with him. With this kid, I can. And I sat down with Ira Miller, who's a Hall of Fame voter and covered the 49ers, the Chronicle, with Jay Cutler in training camp in 2008. And we spent about 5 to 10 minutes with him. And afterwards, I got up and I said, I would never be in the huddle with that guy. He was arrogant. He had no interest in talking to us. He was distracted. And I said, there's no leadership ability in this kid. I don't see anything. And fast forward to later in that season, John Lynch was on that team, and there was something that was going on in that locker room. Jay Cutler just kept looking at his phone, because when we were talking to him, he didn't give us the time of day. And honestly, at one point, I said, Jay, you can do us a favor. You either answer whatever those are, text messages, I guess, answer those, or you put that thing down and talk to us. So he put it down like a petulant child, said, fine, and I thought, my gosh, this is the quarterback of the team. Well, anyway, fast forward to the end of the season, John Lynch took the phone out of his hand and threw it against the wall and smashed it in 1,000 pieces. They said, pay attention to us. Would you please? Would you pay attention to us? That's the one I'm talking about. It's a long story about leadership, but I've always thought that's been sort of diminished when we look, and especially with analytics and everything. Look at how far somebody can throw. What do we talk about? Kyle Bowler. Kyle Bowler on his knees could throw a ball through the end zone, between the goalposts, over the crossbar, on his knees at 50 yards. That's what we talked about. Well, so what? I mean, it didn't make him a great quarterback. It didn't. There are other tangibles, and timing's one, certainly. I mean, honestly, with the 49ers, they brought Tom Brady in when I was out there in 2000 for a workout, because they bring the local kids in for workouts. And he was at San Mateo. They brought him in, you know the story. And Greg Knapp, God rest his soul, was the quarterback's coach. And he said there was really nothing special about him. I mean, we just measured everything. He said the problem was we couldn't measure what was inside of him. We didn't know how competitive this guy was. We didn't know that. Now we do. Yeah, would we have drafted? Yeah, sure, everybody would. You didn't know that. And New England kind of fell into him. Dick Rayburn was the quarterback's coach, and he fell in love with him, and they took him, as we know, the 199th pick, 6th round. But that's the stuff. Yeah, right, John, you're right. There's certain things that I think every so often with Brock Purdy, how did he become the last player in the draft? How is that possible? I don't know. One day we're going to find out.
That's a great story about Cutler, because the arm talent on that kid was I've never seen anybody throw back shoulder on a dime better than Jay Cutler.
Oh, he had great talent.
Yeah. But if you don't have the other stuff, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you could just see it in his personality, John. If you would spend some time with him, you go, there's nothing here. I mean, Dan Fouts, who I covered in San Diego, there was fire there, and I would bet, some of these guys get in the huddle, there's going to be something there that brings the teammates together. The thing that to me was always remarkable about Manning and Brady is they made everyone else around them better. They didn't have, well, especially Brady, didn't have a great supporting cast, but they elevated and they just made them better. Certain quarterbacks that are like that. And you talk about being unflappable. Remember Joe Montana in the Cincinnati Super Bowl, where they're first and 98 for 2 yards to go at the 8-yard line. Yeah. He says to Harris Barton, hey, there's John Candy in the stadium. I mean, that's just
great story.
That's right.
Great story.
Yeah.
All right, Clark, you're going to make my day, or you're going to just blow my day up here.
Yeah, okay, Philadelphia. Next question. I'm taking Philadelphia.
And I'm not asking you the Eagles 49ers pick. Your Hall of Fame duties. You're about 2 weeks away from having to jump in. Conference call again? Is it Zooming, or are you guys going to do it live at the Super Bowl?
No, we're conference call, and it's a Zoom conference call. And
again,
and
the senior contributors, 4 up for potential selection, 3 players, 1 coach, Coryell, Riley, Klecko, and Howley. Is there a number that must get it? Could it be a 0? Can it be a 4? How is it based on the veteran guys if they do or don't get in?
It's based on a vote, simple vote, and then it's 80% of the 49 voters have to vote yes. So it's an up or down vote. So let's say the three of us are voting, and Jody, you present Ken Riley. Okay, and then when they're finished, they go, John, do you have any questions? Clark, do you have any questions? But there are 48 others other than you in that room. And then there's a discussion. And at the end of that, they said, okay, we'll take a vote now on Ken Riley. Take the vote, turn it in. And then after the contributor, who is Don Coryell, and the three seniors, Riley, Howley, and Klecko, are all discussed, then we say, okay, we're voting, that we voted on these guys. Now we're moving on to the modern era players. But the results aren't revealed until the very end. And honestly, the results would be
all
revealed.
4 could get in, or none of
sure.
the 4
Oh,
could
no.
get in.
No. Yeah. I mean, you would expect one of them to get in,
Yeah.
but yeah, all 4 can get in, and I mean, honestly, Jody and John, I'll be honest with you. I mean, listen, I covered Coryell. To me, he's a lock. Should have been in a long time ago. Coryell will be in. Those 3 seniors, they should be in too. I don't see any way these guys don't get in. I don't. I mean, the one guy I had some hesitation about was Klecko, just because. Sorry, guys, and that must be the Hall of Fame calling. Was because I sort of looked at that and went, well, who was more dangerous in that defensive line? Was it Klecko or was it Gastineau? I mean, Gastineau got a zillion sacks, and if you're a quarterback, who scares you more? Probably Mark Gastineau. I think Gastineau,
passer.
But
now, Clark,
moved up and down the line.
Since they made the change in the seniors, everybody's gotten in, right? Since they shifted it, has anybody? I don't think anybody.
Yes.
I don't think everybody's
gotten in. But when you say since they've made the change, I mean to the change to 3, because it was 1, and then it was 2, then it was 1, then it was 2 every other year.
Yeah.
But now we've gone to 3. But there was Dick Stanfeld back in 2012, I think, was kicked back, and that's when they had 2. If you have 2 guys, it's easier to kick back 1 than if you have 1. If you have 1 and you kick him back, you're telling the senior committee, we don't trust you. Well, the senior committee does such a great job of vetting these guys. And if you saw in 2017, I think it was, when they had 2 contributors, Paul Tagliabue was one of them, and he got kicked back. And we always said, if you want Tagliabue in, put him up as the lone guy, right? But there was a real, as you know, I mean, it's not getting into it, volatile conversation in that room. And then Paul got in, as I think he should have, in the with the Centennial class in 2020.
Yeah, Klecko deserves to go in above.
Oh no, Klecko. Yeah, I'm not trying to.
He's the top guy, big guy.
Yeah, I'm not trying to diminish what Klecko did.
I'm a Klecko wonk and have been for 25 years. So
and he played up and down the line. That's what I'm saying. He was good. He played, nose tackle, nose guard. I mean, defensive tackle, defensive end. He was good up and down that line. But I'm going to tell you, if I'm a quarterback, I look and see Gastineau there, and clearly Gastineau was a pass rush guy. Klecko could do everything. So anyway.
Exactly.
Make Jody happy and say Darrelle Revis is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Darrelle Revis is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to get in. So will Joe Thomas will get in. Then the question is the other 3 guys. I would think off the top of my head, DeMarcus Ware, who should have been a first ballot guy last year, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you guys love pass rushers, right? And I always thought I used to cover the Vikings back in the day, and I always thought that Chris Dolman and John Randall would have, they might get in, but it'd take them a little bit longer. Yeah. Now I thought Jared Allen, well, he'll be in, but he's kind of been lagging. Why do you think?
I can't explain it, John. Other than championships, didn't play on a championship team, and what is the player? I think this brought before us was like 67% of the players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame have got rings or championships, because obviously guys before the Super Bowl didn't have rings, but they're championship players. And so, that should have nothing to do with it, but it does, it seems like. And then all decade, it's something like 70% of them are all decade choices, which makes sense. They're the best of their decade. But Jared Allen will get in. He won't get in this year, but and that's just that's what I thought. But I think you get in. The key question for me is Albert Lewis, who I think is a great guy to have up and he's never been a finalist until this year, his 20th year of modern era eligibility, which is his last year. So if he doesn't get in now, he gets to kick back to the senior committee, and people, your listeners, say, so what? He still can get in. Yeah, he can get in. Look at the senior pool of players, as you guys know. It's so deep. There's something like 53 all-decade players in there who've never been discussed. Never been. So how do you get these three guys coming out right now? Howley, should he have been long ago? Yeah, sure. Riley, 65 interceptions, 5th best of all time. Yeah. What about Joe Klecko? Jody Mack would have put him in as a first ballot guy. But you know what? They've sat there because they get forgotten with time. That's what happens.
All right. Because I haven't stated it today. I've stated it 476 times on the air. Only player in the history of the National Football League to make the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions. Joe Klecko.
Right.
But I digress. Right. You kind of hinted at it earlier. Do you want to come right out and say it? Eagles are going to beat the 49ers? Or do you want to say, I'm leaning toward the Eagles beating the 49ers game on Sunday? How's it go?
Yeah, no, I would think the Eagles would beat the 49ers just because they're the more complete team. Now, if there's an injury, what happens if Hurts gets hurt? If there are turnovers, those are things you don't really expect. But I think San Francisco's got to play close or ahead to have a chance to this game. I don't want to put it in Brock Purdy's hands. I think this is asking too much of him. And as I said before, what he's done is extraordinary. You guys know that. But now you're asking him to go even one step farther. I think it's amazing he's helped get this team to where it is now. But, I'd be surprised if the Eagles lost. I'd be surprised. Bengals, Eagles,
and
Super
likes
Bowl.
The Bengals. I haven't
like
made
the
my
Bengals.
mind up on that one yet.
Again, I just said, they're just a complete team, and if Burrow doesn't screw up, how does Mahomes beat him on one leg? Maybe it's another chapter to the Superman story, but unfortunately, Superman's got kryptonite here, and that's Joe Burrow.
That's what the record says. Catch his podcasts. I Test for Two. Check them out on the Talk of Fame. Clark Judge, whenever you come on, you add plenty of insight. We thank you for doing so again today. Enjoy the games on Sunday and then your Hall of Fame stuff coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, guys. And I'll check in with you prior to the Super Bowl when the Eagles are there, right?
Ooh, that would be nice. Clark, great stuff. Thanks much, bud. Clark Judge, Talk of Fame, here with us on Birds 360.
I love talking to Clark, man. I'm a wonk. I love that stuff. I love those stories. I love it. Love it.
He's been doing it a long time at a very high level. John McMullen Jody McDonald, Mac and Mac. We're running out of time. Need to come back.